that another app? Huh. I thought that would work. Give me a second here. Do I need to not have the capital letters? Maybe? Um, alright. Okay. Hello.
Hello.
Let me quickly try to test the audio balancing because I'm not 100% sure how loud you are in comparison to me, and I don't have anybody in chat to test, so let me just bring this up on my phone so I can test.
Alrighty.
Um, okay, you're a little bit louder than I am, it seems like. So let me turn my desktop audio down. Can you just say like testing or something?
Testing, testing,
And then one more time.
testing, testing.
Cool. Okay. We
You
need
didn't
to.
stream, by the way. I have the PDF. I
Oh,
have the PDF.
fair enough. Um, yeah. Okay, fair enough. I I was gonna share just in case you wanted to follow along, more. I guess more
No, I can
directly.
follow along from the. Yeah, I
Okay,
can follow along from the PDF.
cool. Um, let's. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out this audio balancing still. I'm not a professional streamer by any means, so it's gonna take me a
Okay,
second.
me neither.
Yeah.
Literally just started 4 days ago now.
Okay. Oh, so you started streaming around the same time I started reading it, the book. Okay. Like, did we have this idea independently? Like,
I think I was already planning on streaming, and I forget if I think I might have watched your video and I was like, I should just start streaming. And then I finally got around to it. I was planning on doing this for like a while. This is
okay,
like something
cool.
I was going to do for a while, but just I was like, I think it was just like I saw I think it might have been I literally did see your thing and I was like, oh, I should just do this.
I mean, hey, fair enough.
And
Um, okay, well, I think the audio is fine now. We have okay, hi Snarkcore. If you want to say anything about the audio, like the balancing between me and Envy, just let me know. Um, uh, so I guess Envy, do you want to introduce yourself to my audience? I don't really have much of an audience, but even still.
yeah, sure, why not? Uh I just I just know that Latour. Factish Gods is actually the first book I ever started with by Latour. And it was like it's the book I've also read the most of Latour. I reread this like 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
Um and so I ended up getting a I liked it a lot and then I um just started reading from um everything else.
Yeah.
I read I've read like half of Latour's stuff now. I've read everything I think besides I think Pandora's Hope
Okay.
comes
Cool.
before the first essay of Factish Gods, but I've read everything up to that I've read most things up to that from the first essay.
Yeah. Okay. Um. Does are you so some of his works aren't are we just talking about his English works or can you also read French? Because some of his works aren't translated as far as I can tell. Um, because like
Um uh no, I cannot read French, but most of his work is most of his I'm pretty sure most if not all of his books are translated.
okay, that makes sense.
Now I think the last book to be I might be wrong on that, but I think the last book to be translated was the one that came out at the beginning of this year, I think it was, or at the end of last year.
Mm-hmm.
Which was which is if we lose the earth we lose our souls, which is about climate change.
Okay.
And he ended up writing it like it was literally it was I'm pretty sure he wrote it on his deathbed. It was like literally the last book he ever had the chance to write.
Jeez.
It was published like the day after he died. I don't
Wow.
know if he finished it, but it's at least published the day after he died. So
That's jeez. No, I
yeah,
am as I understand it, Latour did care a lot about climate change and the and the implications therein. Um, so for anybody who's here, Envy is reading is also reading Latour. Which book are you reading? It's I don't remember.
politics of nature.
Yeah, Politics of Nature. Um,
How to
and
bring the sciences, how to bring democracy into the sciences, I think is the subtitle.
okay. Yeah. And they have as they said, they have a lot of Latour knowledge. Oh, actually, what are your pronouns? Because I don't actually know.
See her.
She, her. Okay. She has a lot of good knowledge on Latour, and I think this will be great. So, um, let's let's recap from last time. I did that at the beginning of last stream as well because I want to make sure that I'm actually retaining information from time to time, or from
Yeah.
chapter to chapter, or from section to section. Um, and so from what I remember of last time, uh, the sections I was reading were about um like the double denunciation that anti-fetishism takes up, where there's the denunciation of the fetish object um as being actually the creation of human hands and all power is then redirected to the human. But then there's the second denunciation, which then redirects the redirection back onto another fetish object, namely the facts or factishes, where um where you are redirecting it back onto some kind of other force that you think actually explains it. And you do this in response to those who take the constructedness of the fetish object as basically, I guess, creative license. Who so like I guess the example he gave, especially I actually could be mixing this up with Has Critique Run Out of Steam, because I did read that in the interim between this stream and last. And it makes a
Yep.
lot of the same points. So I could very much be mixing
Yes.
it up, but
Yes.
it's like um so like a very like a facile sociological reading where you say, oh, well, it wasn't actually, human agency, it was insert your preferred um social explanation. So, say it's the productive forces, or you say it's capitalism, or you say it's, like society or whatever, right? And in doing so, you are and it's not like this is it's not as if all anti-fetishism gives the same explanation, but the point is that all of them simplify it to this kind of fact position that then comes in to explain away the original explanation for fetishism. In your estimation, do I have that right? Because um
You might have misspoke, but there was only one thing I want to make sure,
okay.
which you'll see, but I just want
Yes.
to make sure that you know so you don't get confused later.
Hmm.
Factishes, the fact position and factishes are two different things.
Okay.
Factishes is more what Latour wants to go to.
Okay. Okay. Right. Okay, yes, 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 yes. You're right, because the fairy position and the fact position are like the two positions that are being operated with. They're not the things
Yes.
themselves. Yes. Okay. So like I think, so if I have it correct, and you feel free to correct me, like the first enunciation is correspondent to the fairy position, and then the second to the fact position. Is that how I understand it?
Um, you can think of it that way, but the way I'd explain it,
Mm-hmm.
um, the the first enunciation, what it does is it tells the person,
Mm-hmm.
um, um, hey, you don't actually need this fairy object. It's getting rid of the fairy object, which I don't know if that's what you meant, which is why
Yep.
I'm clarifying.
Yep.
It's getting rid of it, and it's saying, no, you actually do this yourself. And the
Mm-hmm.
second enunciation is saying when the person says, you did this by yourself? No, you actually need this other thing, this fact object, whatever it may be, economics,
Mm-hmm.
whatever social theory you like, whatever scientific theory you'd like either. And actually, it's this instead. And so it is which is why it's kind of like which is the weird thing about it, because they're getting rid of this one thing for this other. They're tossing away this other object, but they end up really back in the same position.
Mm-hmm.
The actor is never free.
Yes.
Um
No, that makes.
even when the critic says he's gonna save you.
Mm-hmm. No, I get. Yes, I think that's how I understood it, because it's
Yeah.
first to, and I think it that helps to clarify the thing that I was the sentence that I was struggling with last time, um where uh what was it? It was like the sentences the sentence was, whites always erect idols in other people's lands and then immediately overthrow them, multiplying the operators that disseminate the origins of the action in their own lands. And I was kind of struggling with that last time. And I think that um I think I understand now that like it is it is erecting the idols of other people by saying, you are fetishizing this object. But then they in their own lands here, they're using the fact object as like the new fetish that actually explains uh the actions of the fetishizers, thus multiplying the operators. Is that Is that like more or less correct?
Yeah, yeah, I'd say so. That's I could have some gripes, but that's close enough where it's like it doesn't matter. Like
Okay.
I'm pretty sure you get it.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Um, I I yes. Was there one other thing I wanted to to ask about first? Um, I don't remember. Let me see. Yes. Okay. I actually, so now this also goes on to help me understand another thing that I was struggling with, where he was talking about commodity fetishism, right? And he says economic anthropology attests to the fact that relationships among human beings, whether fetishized by way of merchandise or not, seem no more simple or transparent than those among divinities. If merchandise loses its seeming autonomy, no human regains mastery as a result, and certainly not the tireless worker. And I think I understand that now, where it's, you say, commodities are a fetish. In fact, it is the social relationships that give them value. But then that's only the first denunciation. The second denunciation is then, the tireless worker is a product of, like historical forces or whatever, right? Um, and I think I was confused about that before, but I think that's what he's saying. Uh, does that resonate? Does that make sense?
Um,
Also for
I
pay if
think
mm-hmm,
I that might be the way I took it, and I'm not certain about this, so
mm-hmm,
I'll just give my explanation. This is one of the bits I'm not that certain about, just because I haven't read Marx. I haven't read a
yeah,
lot of stuff, but I
okay,
need
that's
to.
fair. So
Um,
I
but
mean, I have, so I can.
I'm pretty sure what he's saying is when you how do I say this? I don't know if I know how to say this right now. I'll
Mm-hmm,
I'll think about it, and
yeah.
if I get to it,
No,
I'll
it's
we can
totally
go back to
fine.
this if that's fine with you.
And Pippa says in chat, popular fact objects are nature and nurture. They are used to explain action. Yep. And then if we defetishize commodities, we return mastery to society, not to any individual.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, that's what I was trying to figure out how to say.
yeah,
Yes, that's what
yeah. And
I
then
didn't know if that's how you meant it.
yeah, no, I no, that is how I meant it. That like it's
Okay.
not it is not the tireless worker as an individual, as a subject. It is now like the mass of society, like the mass of
Yes.
tireless workers, which is the abstraction away from that person, right? Um
Yes.
and it kind of also gives me the like vibes of like we the people say the XYZ, or like tacit consent to government, right? The people's will, these kinds of abstractions. um it's never like any one person, it's like this group subject that wills it, supposedly. um
Yeah.
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 Anyway, I shall now be reading um on from where we were. Um, I'm gonna reread the last paragraph of the last one. The where my PDF, it's page 21, and it's how the practical
Yes.
competence of factitious eludes theory. Um,
I'm actually pretty sure we have the same PDF, so
okay,
works out
awesome.
perfectly.
Yes. So here is a felix culpa that allows us to stop believing in the essential, radical, foundational difference between facts and fetishes. What good is this difference if it does not even allow us to account for scientific work? Why insist so strongly on an absolute distinction that can never be applied? Because it is used precisely to redouble the advantages of practice with those of theory. The double repertoire of the moderns cannot be discovered in their distinction between facts and fetishes, but in the second, more subtle distinction between the separation of facts from fetishes that they institute in theory on the one hand, and the total different passage from one to the other that they carry out in their practice on the other. Belief then takes on a new meaning. It is what allows one to keep the practical form of life in which one causes something to be fabricated at a distance from the theoretical forms of life in which one has to choose between facts and fetishes. This is how critical thinkers can go on purifying theory indefinitely without having to face the possible consequences of their purification. Um, yes. And I think that this definitely resonates with me personally because I've read I want to say like a good bit of scientific realism versus anti-realism and that kind of stuff, right? Um and one point that's been made by uh or one point that's been contested amongst them is whether or not scientists themselves are scientific realists or anti-realists. Like, you know, and I think that what's always bothered me is that it doesn't seem to really make a difference to the scientists if they are if they're realists or anti-realists. They seem to not care nearly as much as like the philosophers do. They go on to do the scientific practice um, as they do it, and they kind of use vocabulary from one or the other as needed. Um, so they are not making the distinction, but in practice, but in theory, in theoretical life, the critical thinker, as Latour calls it, like forces the distinction onto them, and in that way is like symmetrical with yeah. Does that I discount that last part? Am I
Yeah.
am I understanding this correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. To kind of derail a little bit, but
Yeah,
not. Latour has another thing where he kind of talks about a similar thing, and that is matters of fact versus matters of concern.
yeah.
And he talks about how this difference can be illustrated by talking about like just two different, a completely banal kind of rock
Hmm.
and a like rock that very much isn't banal, and like the differences in how you end up describing that thing are like so vast,
Hmm.
it's kind of where he talks about and one of the things he talks about. It's one of the examples he goes to
Yeah. And
where
maybe I don't know if this is the exact same thing, but this is also how like I would say even like the ostensibly the same object can take on a different form depending on like its place in theoretical versus practical life. There's this really interesting paper I read, I want to say a couple of years ago. Um it's titled something like Water is not H2O. And it kind of goes into how uh how different scientific practices actually treat the concept of water and whether or not it can be identified strictly with H2O or not. Um and how there's like a difference between, chemical kinds and the everyday concepts that we use. Like when I say get me a glass of water, um you might just go to the faucet. And a lot of times in scientific practice, you might also say, get me a like fill this with water. You might just use a faucet too. But in other cases where it's more important, you would specify H2O specifically. And so we're kind of like making this difference here between like the theoretical life and uh, I guess like the way that like people actually operate, like the banal rock versus like the scientifically interesting one. I don't know if. Mhm,
something important.
mhm.
Practical life is the life gone about in labs as
Okay.
well. um I wanted to make sure that you weren't
Hmm.
because
Yes.
it's I think it's probably kind of easy to mix those two up, so
Yes.
I didn't
No,
know
it
if you did,
totally
but I
makes
just wanted
sense.
to make
And
sure.
I
I just wanted to make sure.
appreciate the distinction because yeah, because I definitely think I was slipping between those two. That like it is practical life in as far as like scientists are doing a practice, right? And
Yes,
it's
it's
mhm,
the funny part is
mhm,
I'm pretty sure Latour would consider what he is doing right now um um theoretical life
mhm,
is the funny part. He never explicitly makes clear. I don't think he ever explicitly makes clear the distinction. But one of the things that is very clear is that when scientists are doing lab work, they are under the realm of practice, so to speak.
yep,
They are practicing.
that makes sense. And I think he quotes, yeah, he
He
quotes,
quotes Pasteur.
yeah, exactly. And and that kind of shows it shows how actual, in practice scientists make slippage between the construction and the, matters of fact, and how,
Yes.
yeah. And I think that's really interesting, I guess, where he seems to be saying, at least if I understand this, that um like that this difference between how we treat things in theory versus how like scientists actually treat them in practice um is in some way, I don't know. Let me hold on, let me reread this real quick in my head. Or I guess what he's saying is that it's like essential to modernist or the modern's conception of like uh of science. And I find that
Yes.
interesting. Um
Something very important.
mhm,
Uh, ex- I think for all of Latour's work, but for especially this book,
mhm.
um, the moderns aren't naive.
Yeah.
The anti-fetishists aren't. No
Yes.
one for Latour. No one is
Mhm.
naive. They aren't just like. No one takes the role of the fetishist.
Yes. And
Ever.
he makes that clear earlier as well, where he says, like when he's establishing symmetry between fetishists and anti-fetishists, but only in the sense, but also in the sense that both of them are soberly applying what they're doing. They're not like they're not tricked. They're not being tricked into this. They understand what's going on, and I think in a footnote, he contravenes Freud and Marx specifically as not understanding that the moderns, as he calls them, are doing it soberly and intentionally and understanding what they're doing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, I'm now gonna start reading this section. It's been a half hour already. uh, so
It's like I said. It's a lot. There's a lot to go
yes,
over. So
but I appreciate how much I appreciate how clear it is at the very least, even though it is a lot.
yes.
Um, like I definitely have struggled in the past, but I with like other thinkers in this sort of vein. But I appreciate how much he tries to be really clear about what he's doing. Um,
A lot of the stuff that like I explained to you,
mhm,
it probably would have been cleared up if
yeah,
you just read more.
yeah, that's true.
That's usually how it is. How I've found Latour.
Hmm. Anyway, how the practical competence of factishes eludes theory. As soon as we begin to size up practice, we notice that the ordinary actor, modern or not, starts speaking in exactly the same terms as the coastal blacks and the candomblé initiates, in whose company I began this brief discussion. The ordinary actor blurts out something entirely self evident, namely that his construction has gotten slightly out of hand. Quote, "We are indeed manipulated by forces that go beyond us," unquote, he might say, tired of being tossed about in all directions and accused of naivete. Quote, "It hardly matters whether they are called divinities, genes, neurons, economies, societies, or affects. Maybe we were wrong about what word we should use for these powers, but not about the fact that that they count more than we do. Conversely," unquote, the ordinary actor might continue, quote, "We were indeed right when we said that we fabricate our own fetishes, since we are at the origin of the various forces that you want to take away from us. by making us into puppets manipulated by the powers of the market, evolution, society, or the brain. Maybe we were wrong about what name to give our freedom, but not about the fact that we act in concert with others, whether we call them divinities or aliens. What we fabricate never possesses and never loses its autonomy. Unquote. Um, hey Brooks, I'm reading Factish Gods alongside Envy. Um, yeah, yeah. So let me try to digest that. Um, well, I guess it's more or less saying exactly what you said a second ago, which is that the moderns are completely aware of what's happening here, that they're not being tricked into this kind of double denunciation. They understand both sides of this, like the construction and the supposed construction and the supposed like fact nature of it. Um,
Yeah.
and and that this is like it's almost like the point, and that they don't see in practice the contradiction, even if in theory they will say that there is a contradiction between them.
Latour brings up multiple. It's one of the things that he does throughout this.
Hmm.
He talks about the multiple ways in which we talk about this, in which all these distinctions we actually ignore when we start talking about, like, especially things we love.
Hmm. Yes.
Um, I I forget if you got to the bit
Yes, he did.
about
So
the writer yet.
oh, the writer? I don't know, but he did talk about like the different lists
Yeah.
earlier, where you have four lists. One is forces you want to explain away, and one for is forces you take as basic. And then you have like the credit ledger, which is, the virtues that you think are important, and then the other ones that you don't think are important. And you never cross check them. You just like you cling to like the stubborn positivism of the ones that you agree with, and and not the ones that you disagree with, right? Like
Yeah.
um and I definitely feel this kind of resonance with especially like really bad readings of Marx, where like there's people who call like Marxism an immortal science and whatever, right? And they seek to explain, using Marx's theoretical tools, they seek to explain literally anything and everything as a form of, either false consciousness or class consciousness, or manifestations of this, that, or the other thing, right? And you know and when you like question them, they just go right back to quoting a Marx, quoting Marx at you, as if like, they're like they're basically going in reverse, like they're sticking to the Marxism and then ruthlessly critiquing everything else, to this like stubborn, like critical inquiry that is always going to look correct, because you can either occupy the fact or the fairy position depending on which one is more expedient, and you will always look as if you were right in the end. And again, this is
Yeah.
not all Marxism by any means. There are great Marxist theorists out there. I'm just saying that like this is especially true of like MLs, for example, where uh they're doing this very much like the immortal science of Marxism Leninism. It's just like I hate talking about it like that, but yeah. Anyway, um, continuing. The words fetish and fact have the same ambiguous etymology, as ambiguous for philosophers of science as for the Portuguese, but each of the two words emphasizes the inverse nuance of the other. The word fact seems to point to external reality, and the word fetish seems to designate the foolish beliefs of a subject. Within the depths of their Latin roots, both conceal the intense work of construction that allows for both the truth of fact and the truth of minds. It is this common truth that we must bring out, without believing either in the ravings of a psychological subject steeped in daydreams, or in the external existence of cold and ahistorical objects that fall into a laboratory as if dropped down from heaven, and without believing in naive belief either. Joining the two etymological sources, we shall use the label factish for for the robust certainty that allows practice to pass into action without the practitioner ever believing in the difference between construction and reality, immanence and transcendence. And that goes to 23. So let me bring that up as well. Um, I have a I have a different I have it open in a browser so that I can bring it up. I actually reset it though, so I gotta go to this page number. So this is 23. And I guess while I'm finding it, I think this is actually something I picked up on last time, and Envy, you and I yeah. No, I definitely yes, I see that.
Brooks is fucking.
Yeah.
Brooks is on it.
Yes, so on our case for not going into to complete elaboration. But what I was going to say is that you and I talked a bit off stream about this, and I definitely this feels very. I picked up on this last stream, and I'm glad that I'm reaffirmed in this that there's like kind of almost a pragmatism to this, like pragmatism in the style of like James or Dewey or whoever else, um, where or even honestly like a Humeanism where we have we have there's this quote from Hume that I really enjoy where it's like he more or less says, you should always be convinced of the force of skeptical arguments, but then, when you go into the real world, you kind of just you take things as they are, like a skeptical argument in the real world when you're living your actual life is not going to be helpful to you in any way, shape, or form. Uh, hold on, I'm still trying to find this one. It's 23. Um,
Yes.
yes. Hold on. This is notes for chapter. Yep, this is notes for chapter 1. All right, and let me. Sorry, for some reason it's now it should be yes. There we go. So 23. One should add to this the artifact, in the laboratory sense, of a parasite mistaken for a new being. Unlike facts, artifacts are surprising because human actions can be discovered where they have not been expected. The word thus provides a transition between the surprise of facts and the surprise of fetishes. There is no more reason for giving up the word fetish than for giving up the word fact, on the pretext that the moderns believed in belief and wanted to disqualify the former term while retaining the latter. In practice, no one has ever believed in fetishes, and everyone has always paid astute attention to facts. The two words thus remain intact. Since the phonemic difference between the French terms fier, fee, and I'm just going to say fairy and fact is not always audible, some might prefer factiche over factiche in French. In the English, factish, the etymological link to fairy is unfortunately lost. Or in English, it's lost. Yes.
Yeah.
So Brooks is Faye and is it really Faye and Faye? That's very funny.
Yeah.
Um, yes. So every event of construction is simultaneously an event of autonomous actualization. The first sentence of the section, size up practice, is a move from theory to to practical. That's why he says ordinary actor and why it matters so much.
Yeah. I'm, if I remember correctly, I think when he's referring to the moderns,
Mhm.
he uses ordinary actor, but when he's referring to anti-fetishists, I don't think he ever does. Because the anti-fetishist, because when someone's an anti-fetish, they're denouncing the ordinary actor.
Mhm.
A modern is just someone who believes in belief, and it's
Mhm.
he wrote this after he wrote "We Have Never Been Modern," so it's
Yes.
almost certainly um um handing that out, which I didn't know at the time when I first read this
I
because I
I
didn't read
fig
it yet.
I knew that we have never been modern was a book, and thus I knew that this was probably a reference to that. But I've never read We Have Never Been Modern, so uh
He takes it a lot of the times in his books, even if he takes on the same concepts, he either explains them or gets into them a bit differently
yeah,
in each. Never different enough, but he adds a bit.
yeah.
Um, in We Have Never Been Modern, it is not kind of the it is, but it also he doesn't explain it that way. He doesn't explain it as moderns believe in belief in that way.
Mhm.
It's the book is much more dedicated to that concept. A lot of Latour's books, they're kind of um well, this is an essay, so it's a bit different. But
Yeah.
a lot of Latour's books are focusing on um, one project like totally,
Mhm.
and so everything goes towards that.
Yeah. I mean, like as I was saying earlier, I was reading I before between this stream and last I read Has Critique Run Out of Steam? And it really
Very
does
good
it
essay.
does feel like a re-exploration or a restatement of a lot of these same points. And I believe Has Critique Run Out of Steam was actually written after this essay in particular, right? Because this
Yes,
one is from
yes,
1993 or something, or I'm not sure.
yeah. It's
Um,
either 93 or 96. I forget.
yeah,
Um, and we have Critiques from Steam was published in 2004, I believe, but I think it was either it was from a lecture, I think, or
okay,
something that he had written before, and that was in like 2003 or 2002.
yeah,
So yeah,
but yeah. So the point being that he's if it seems like if you've read one of his works, he is in constant dialogue with his own work, and you know making slight modifications or slight, I don't want to say reinterpretations, but like he's re-exploring the same ideas in different ways in order to get to different points, which I find really interesting. And I it helps it, like, having even read this little bit that I have of Factish Gods helped me understand Has Critique Run Out of Steam a lot more than I would have otherwise. Um,
yes,
yeah. Yes.
yes. That is actually that is the big distinction. Pippa has got it.
Yes.
I think fairly good. The first, sorry to clarify, the
Mhm.
first essay is about this.
Yes.
Everything needs to be clarified by
Yeah.
the first essay is
Yeah.
about this because
Mhm.
there's three essays and they're all written at completely separate times.
Um. But yes. So I hold on. Did want to highlight this sentence, um, because this one seems important. Um. Yes.
The novelist example is going to come up in the next paragraph.
All right.
That's funny.
Yes. All right. We'll see. We shall see. As soon as we start to consider practice in this way, without worrying any longer about having to choose too quickly between construction and truth, all human activities, not only those of the candomblé initiates or laboratory researchers, begin to speak about the same passage, the same factish. Don't novelists, too, say that they are carried away by their characters? To be sure, they are accused of bad faith. After after an initial interrogation, do you fabricate your books? Are you fabricated by them? They answer obstinately, just as the coastal blacks and Pasteur did, with one of those marvelous formulas whose meaning always threatens to elude us. We are the offspring of our works. And let no one try to tell us that the practitioners are engaging in dialectics and that subjects, auto positioning themselves within objects, are revealed to themselves by alienating themselves via objects. Artists, who could not care less about subjects or objects, in fact move back and forth between them without any moment even lightly brushing either the subject master of his thoughts or the alienating object. And that goes to 24. Let me bring that up. So 24. Any painter might claim that her canvas is, I'm not going to even try to pronounce that one, is not made by human hands, but she still does not naively expect it to fall varnished from the skies. See the following chapter, and we'll get to that. Brooks says, consider practice in this way means to make everything nominal, that make everything symmetrical. Is it then make everything symmetrical and discard the epistemological status of the things, avoiding the moderns' drive to category.
Brooks is so much better at explaining than I am. With stuff like this, I'm really bad at explaining it. I
I'm
can kind of get to it,
well.
but Brooks does it in so few words.
It would be helpful if Brooks spelled things correctly.
Practice in this way means
Yes.
to make everything nominal, then make everything symmetrical.
Yes. Then
and
make it.
discard the
Yes.
epistemologic status of the things, putting the modern strata category. Yeah.
Yes. No, I get it. And
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Brooks.
Brooks is right.
I just gotta throw that shot at you because
Brooks is
I
very.
understand that it's hard in YouTube comments though. Like, God, it's so limiting having only 200 characters.
You do, yeah. That's the worst part.
Mhm.
You do have to type fast.
Yes. So, all of us who sit down in front of a computer keyboard know that we find out what we think about things by reading what we were writing. But we also hold on. All of us who sit down in front of a computer keyboard know that we find out what we think about things by reading what we were writing. Okay. Sorry, that's interesting to me. I'm trying to think about what he means by this. I'm going to finish the paragraph and then come back to this. Let me highlight yellow. But we also know that we cannot be submerged, for all that, in wordplay or in a zeitgeist that would speak to us unawares, for the excellent reason that such second-class manipulators would have no more mastery over us than the author has over his or her text. This everyday experience is made incomprehensible by the double suspicion of criticism, and that is why it is relegated to the half silence of simple practice. All of us who sit down in front of a computer keyboard know that we find out what we think about things by reading what we were writing. Hmm. So is the sorry, continue.
I can try to explain.
Go for it.
I don't know if I can. Really bad at explaining very specific things. This is one of them, but I can try to do my best. Um, when you Okay, Pippa's already on it. Pippa's already on it.
When you start to type, the words flow of their own accord and reveal your thoughts to you. He's playing with the clandestine wisdom of the passage, switching between autonomy and construction. No, I actually, and you know what? I very much agree with this, and I feel it, I guess, in my own essay writing, where I very much am the kind of person who thinks a lot about what I want to say, and then I sit down and I write it out. That's just what works for me. I'm not saying everybody should do that, because not everybody should do that, definitely. But what I find is that when I am actually in that process of trying to put my thoughts onto a page, and trying to like synthesize all of these different things, the act of having to put it in a way that is understandable to another human being helps to like concretize these thoughts, and like helps to like connect them in ways maybe that I hadn't originally thought about. Like, maybe I'll notice in writing that I've made a parallelism between two different concepts, and I'm like, okay, so now I have to think about, how do these concepts connect, and is there something here that I should explain more? Um, like the process of having to write it out, you know, I guess like it does come into existence, but it's not like a direct translation of my thoughts by any means. And my thoughts almost like change as I am writing it down, and I actually have to think about it. Is that more or less what he's saying? Like, I don't know if that made any sense to you, but um
Yes, I think so.
mhm,
If I understood you correctly, yes.
yes. But yeah, continuing. Uh, yeah. So all of us who sit down in front of a computer keyboard know that we find what we think about things by reading what we were writing. But we also know that we cannot be submerged for all of that in wordplay or in a zeitgeist that could speak to us unawares, for the excellent reason that such second-class manipulators would have no more mastery over us than the author has over his or her text. Yes. Brooks says, you type what you were thinking, then not long after you're reading and you realize you were thinking something.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I think that resonates. Yeah. This everyday experience is made incomprehensible. I'm gonna hold on. Gonna highlight that in green now since I don't need to come back to it. Um, yes. So this everyday experience is made incomprehensible by the double suspicion of criticism, and that is why it is relegated to the half silence of simple practice. Okay, so I guess what he's saying here is that, like, this experience is made incomprehensible. Yeah, so from the perspective of the double of criticism, by which he means like this double denunciation, this sort of thing becomes incomprehensible in the same way, it just because the critic insists upon the distinction and insists that you choose. Uh,
Not just that,
mhm,
the other thing is what Brooks said in chat is also it. The critic ends
mhm,
up taking uh, placing that power onto something else, like
mhm,
a linguistic structure. You
yes,
don't control your text, but they don't control you either.
mhm,
Um, uh, yeah,
yeah,
it's one of the big things. Uh, no one. He's gonna get into this later. No one is the manipulator.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly. The manipulator, the manipulator has disappeared from
yeah.
the in the process. Um, but yeah, I think, and that does resonate with me, especially like with what I've heard from people who write, um, that in a lot of cases, like when you're yeah, like when we analyze writing after the fact, we talk about, the parallelisms between this part and that part and like the overarching themes and all these kinds of things. And, that kind of exercise is valuable, I think. I love doing that sort of thing. But it's often not like it's like it emerges from the process of writing itself, and not it's not something that is like, they didn't always sit down with, I am going to make this exact point. They write it and they say, "Oh, I made that point, didn't I?" I put that theme into my text, and then they can, re-edit to think like, is this the kind of thing I want to say? Yes, yes, Sirius, the double suspicion, the distinction made in theory by the critical thinker, the denunciations, the purification. This exists versus this is constructed. Yep. Um, the double suspicion I understand as being that of ideology, you're unaware of what you believe, and also the unconscious, you don't understand what you desire. Yep. No, that all makes sense. And he's very much contravening, like, I think he explicitly contravenes uh he contravenes explicitly Marx and Floyd Freud earlier in a footnote, um where uh and I was already kind of going down this path because of actually because of James C. Scott. I read an essay from him on hegemony, uh where he basically on hegemony and false consciousness, where he more or less like says that it's not really plausible to think of them as such, but that as observers we think of hegemony as being a thing because of the difference between public and private scripts uh, that people enact. So like when they're uh, in a public facing capacity as political actors, they say one thing, um, but there is also the private script which allows them to uh, express between each other things that wouldn't necessarily be legible to the state structure. Um, Basically, you have to speak the state's language in order for it to understand you. But that looks like, from the perspective of an analyst, um, as if they are captured uh, by ideology, that they can only think in those terms, when in fact it's a consequence of them having to interface on those terms. I don't know if that, but that was like, I think, where I started to question the I guess the ubiquity of false consciousness, and it's interesting that you know other thinkers that I've read, like Latour here, are tackling that same sort of thing from a different perspective. Um,
Latour in some of his books explicitly uses the idea of false consciousness as one of the examples.
yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, it is literally that, and for as much as I love Marx, and that's why I think this is important. This is important to read because it definitely, I have my degree is in sociology, uh, so I have definitely been exposed to like the quick, ready-made sociological critical barbarian sort of thing, right? Um, and so this is good therapy for me to like get me out of my comfort zone and to like make me start thinking about other ways of like using you know social construction that isn't just like you know well, don't you see it's capitalism, don't you see it's patriarchy, and then not really elaborating any further on like why do am I making that connection, what is the mechanism that underlies the way that patriarchy interacts with this, like, but yeah, anyway, continuing. But yes, this Brooks says it's also taking aim at something huge, minimizing and devaluing the actor's own understanding of what they do, telling people they're just too stupid to know better. No, exactly. Brooks, if you haven't read the essay I'm talking about from Scott, that might be an interesting one for you to read, because I think he makes more or less this point that like actors um he makes 2 points actually, that for one, that actors know what they are doing and are making strategic considerations when they moderate what they do, but also that even actors who have different views are more than capable of thinking outside of their initial understanding. This is from James C. Scott. It's I want to say it's like I think it's a chapter from either Weapons of the Weak or Art Domination in the Arts of Resistance. I want to say the chapter is called "False Consciousness or Laying on it on Thick." I can send it to you after this. Um, anyway.
Also, something
Mhm.
else very important, since Brooks is bringing up Ant, I will bring up Ant too.
Mhm.
One of the other things that's very important
And
for
to be clear
Latour.
to audience in the future, ANT is actor network theory with a hyphen
Yeah, I
between
do know what
actor
they.
network. Uh, just so that's clear. But yes, continue.
Yeah, but Latour in reassembling the social,
Mhm.
um, uh, one of the other things that's very important is not um uh is trying your best to use the actor's terms as well,
Mhm.
so that you don't confuse what they're saying. One of the things he said is when the criminal forget how it goes, but a criminal ends up saying that they had bad parents. And one of the things he goes through, one of the things he says later on is, and this criminal certainly didn't say castrating mother.
Hmm.
We can just use what they say. We
Yeah.
don't need to insert all these other things into it.
No, it makes sense. Like I mean, like being able to meet people where they're at, more or less, is what that's saying, right? Like,
Whenever Latour is doing his studies,
hmm.
yeah, whenever Latour is doing his kind of more like field work stuff, where he's like where he literally went out somewhere.
Yeah,
Um, a lot of the book will just be quotations.
yeah,
Will just be literally him quoting conversations he's had, or putting in the book conversations he's had,
yeah.
and going through those.
And that makes sense, as I take it that his training is in anthropology. That, as an anthropologist, that's what makes for good anthropology, is when you let the subjects of your research speak on their own terms. You don't like try to force them into a specific box, and thus foreclose the possibility that they could, like, uh, defy that. So you have to let them explain what they're doing and what it means to them, and how their own material practices are wrapped up in what they do and how they understand them. You can't just come from on high and say, no, this is what you're actually doing. I know better than you do. um yeah.
Holy fucking shit. Uh, I need to start reading Brooks' Inquiry into Modes of Existence more. I started it and I was reading it with someone and they ended up stop reading it with me, so I stopped it. But it seems so good. And also, I need to read Etienne Thoreau. There's a few things by him, and also Latour's essays on him.
Yeah.
So good. It's all so good.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to continue now. So, why should one require Gold Coast blacks to choose between the human fabrication of fetishes and their transcendent truth, while we, whites, we moderns, never choose, unless we are tortured and forced to break up with our own hands the continuous passage that we have just explored in practice? And that goes to 25, which it says, I shall explain the meaning of this break later on. Appearances notwithstanding, technological fabrication does not escape from the either or question. Excuse me. Technologists are quite neatly divided between those who follow the material determinisms of function and those who attach themselves to the arbitrary human or social capriciousness of form. About this dualism, see Bruno Latour and Pierre uh, Lemonnier. Uh, and then it's something that's probably not been translated into English, sadly. Uh, also see the disputatio between the two authors in another thing that has probably not been translated into English. Very unfortunate. Very unfortunate. Um, yeah. Anyway, continuing. In all our activities, we fabricate what? Oh, what we fabricate. Jesus Christ. Sorry. In all our activities, what we fabricate goes beyond us. On the same basis as novelists, researchers, or sorcerers, so too politicians are challenged to lie on the procrustean bed. I don't know what a procrustean is. Do you know, Envy?
Um, Yes and no. I don't remember what it is, but I read this a while ago, and I looked it up, and I
I'm
asked
gonna look this up.
Wag. So kind of
Yeah, so
I have an idea. I have the
So it says it's an adjective, and it says especially of a framework or system enforcing uniformity or conformity without regard to natural variations or individuality.
yeah,
Interesting that it's capitalized. Uh, it's apparently comes from Procrustes, uh,
yeah.
which is, I'm guessing that's a proper noun, or else it would be, yeah, yeah, mythical figure forcing people fit to bed. Yes, yes. All right. So on the same basis as novelists, researchers, or sorcerers, so too politicians are challenged to lie on the Procrustean bed unless they wish to be taken for liars. Are you constructing a national representation? Yes, of course, they answer, and from whole cloth. So you are inventing, through manipulation, propaganda, and trickery, what the representatives should say? No, we are faithful to our constituents because because we are constructing the artificial voice that they would not have without us. Blasphemy, cry the critics. We don't need to hear any more. Lost in their illusions, they can't even recognize their own lies. Um, and this goes to 26, which I shall bring up here. Um, the delegation of uh political fetishism, something like that. I don't know. Uh, Bordeaux gives an account of this scornful attitude towards political representation in which anti fetishism is pushed to the extreme. Quote, the ministry's minister acts only act. Nah, Jesus Christ. Sorry. I'm losing it a little bit. Uh, the ministry's minister acts only provided that the minister hides his usurpation and the imperium he derives from it by asserting that he is just a simple, humble minister. Thus, the minister's symbolic violence can be practiced only with the kind of complicity granted him. Through the ignorance that denegation encourages by the very victims of that violence. It would be hard to misunderstand more completely either the work of representation or the wisdom of the represented. Uh, Only Illusio allows sociologists not to see the glaring contradiction of anti fetishism, whereas Illusio is used naively by the critical sociologist to describe the inability of mere actors to see the glaring contradiction of fetishism. No emperor is more exposed in his nakedness than the critical sociologist who sees himself as the only lucid person in an insane asylum. Jesus, that is harsh, man. That is harsh. Uh,
That's how it is. In his um uh in his essay Pandora's Hope, Brooks will probably remember this.
mhm,
Sorry, in his first essay in Pandora's Hope,
mhm,
the first chapter, he says only a mind in a vat could he who's asked, do you believe in reality by someone,
mhm,
and it was by someone who ended up becoming a friend, and he goes on to say only a mind in a vat could like even think of asking that question, because like it's not a question for him. There's nothing to believe in. He's not
mhm,
there's no separation. This might be the wrong way to say it, but there's no
mhm.
separation between us and the world. It's not what it is.
Yeah. No, and again, this very much it speaks to this kind of attitude very much speaks to the pragmatist in me that you know wants to say at once that things are constructed and that we can say things about them and that we can like make the truths ourselves and that we can have coherent practices that are useful to us and like do specific things that we want them to without having to like give up the systematicity and like the importance of you know treating them as this thing. Yeah. I don't know if that made any sense, but yes.
I think so.
Uh b- Bois Boidio. 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 Am I getting that? Am I getting that? Yes. Um no, for sure. And like yeah, and it is like it is either real or it is, constructed, but you can't for like it's word now what or do n- I'm getting two conflicting I'm getting two conflicting things.
All right, bring us down the chat to give a third
Yeah.
pronunciation. All right, let's get Estelle here.
Bois Dieu, Bois Dieu, Bois Dieu, Bois Dieu, Bois Dieu. I know that French has the inflection on the end. Bois Dieu, Bois Dieu. Yes, Bordeaux, whatever. Okay, we're moving on. Pippa and uh we're moving on from this. Pippa and Brooks can fight it out in the chat. Yes. And yet politicians who have been reduced to silence for 2 centuries or more pass back and forth every day at all hours between this artificial construction and this precise truth, just as researchers who, at least according to the textbooks, are expected to choose between construction and truth spend every day and many nights in the laboratory constructing true truth. Damn. Um, the choice. I'm gonna highlight this, and I very much I said this out of stream, but like it very much I find it interesting because this is the uh kind of person that like you might honestly be able to bring on somebody who has like a more scientific view of things through Latour than through somebody like Kuhn or you know like hardcore scientific constructivism or whatever. Because if anything, he's giving a lot of credit to like realism as a practice, and I believe elsewhere even says that we should be fiercely realist about these practices. Uh, right?
Okay, so there's a complication
Yeah.
with that.
Okay. Sure.
Latour, oftentimes in the same essay, will
Hmm.
call himself a realist and a constructivist. He
Yeah.
quite
Sure.
literally doesn't
Mhm.
care about, like, the
Yes,
terms are synonyms
but
for
that's
him.
because that's because to him
Yeah,
they are the same. Like there is no contradiction between being a realist and a constructivist, right? Like these
yeah,
are one and the same thing for him because it's all like we are as it says here, they are constructing the true truths, right? Or the
yeah.
true truth. But that's why I think
Um,
it would be I think it might help some people understand that who are more like embroiled in like the scientific perspective. Uh like because like he gives them a lot more credit than honestly even than I would give them, but like uh and I think it might be I don't know if I ever am in an argument again about like construction as it pertains to science, I'll probably tell them to look at Latour over any of the other people I would have before, but
yeah.
yeah.
If you read Latour,
Hmm.
the idea that he hates science or wants to give less like power to science is
Hmm.
genuinely the most insane thing ever.
Yeah, like
It's he
I was surprised that the people in the science wars like hated him so much because like
they hated all of the
mm,
they didn't like any of the uh what's it called? Um fuck. What is it called? Science studies people.
mhm,
I'm pretty sure they didn't like any of the science studies people.
yeah,
Um like everyone who was like working with Latour was
mhm.
kind of just like, oh, you're just fucking weird. And they were like hit on both sides Latour talks about
Yeah,
because Latour disagrees with the scientists and also the
mhm.
his own like his own field sociology.
Yeah, exactly. Um, mm, yeah, that isn't because he disempowered science. It is because they privileged it. Yeah, and
Yeah, yeah,
it,
no, yeah.
and it
But
makes sense. Like he clearly has deep respect for science. Like he's not saying science is wrong or bad. He's not anti-science. If anything, he's saying like you know what scientists do is real. It's a real practice that like actually is something valuable that we should pay attention to. It's just that it's and that in practice scientists don't actually commit, like, or don't actually have to choose between these two modes. You know, they just have, like, as the graph from earlier shows, there is just like in practice the um the fact, like there is the passage between the the fabricated and the non-fabricated. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's really crazy. Latour literally talks about in some of his essays
Mhm.
how they end up turning how the stuff he's writing ends up getting turned into like literally the exact opposite of
Yeah.
what he's saying, and
Yeah.
how it's an issue he has to grapple with.
Mhm.
It comes up in like quite a few of his writings.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah. Anyway,
you'll
continuing.
remember it
Oh,
from Why Is Critique Ran Out of Steam.
I remember from what? Sorry? Oh yeah.
He
Yes.
was
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
he did
Why
the
why
thing.
critique
Yeah.
is yes, yes, yes. Sorry. I you said it fast enough that I didn't it didn't register as the name of the essay.
Yeah.
This often happens to me for some reason. Like I hear sounds and then I don't understand that the sounds are meant to fit together in a specific way. Um,
I know
Brooks,
exactly what you mean.
yes. Brooks says it's the same as people did with Deleuze that turned him into a mutant publicly. The idea that he was anti-science and math. I mean, like this is the shit that they say about like all of these people, right? Um, they say it about Deleuze. They say it about Derrida. They say it about like all of these different these very honestly sometimes very disparate thinkers. um they just say you're anti-reason, you're anti-science. Well, it's like it's literally the thing that what's his face, uh who's the guy who's the explaining postmodernism guy, Hicks, Stephen Hicks. Like he that's like his entire shtick is basically saying, you know uh the postmodernists, they don't value reason at all, and they think science is all bunk, like they hate math, uh like all of these different things that are just like yeah, it's just ridiculous what they say about these people. Anyway, the choice that the moderns are proposing is thus not between realism and constructivism, but between that choice itself and a practical existence that grasps neither the terms of that choice nor its importance. Whereas before, we could only swing violently back and forth between the two extremes of the modern repertoire, or else attempt to go beyond these extremes using dialectics, as the Baron of Munchausen, quote, went beyond quote, the laws of gravity. I'm guessing the Baron of Munchausen like jumped off of something, off a tall structure. I'm not 100% sure what this is referencing, but Um, actually, I can just look it up. The internet is at my fingertips.
I didn't know what this
Baron,
was referring to the first time, but if this is what it is,
yeah, a
it's
fictional
actually really
character
funny.
known for his widely exaggerated and fantastical tall tales. Um, okay, I think he flew to the moon or something. Interesting. But yes. Whereas before we could only swing violently between the two extremes, or else attempt to go beyond these extremes using dialectics, as the Baron Munchausen quote went beyond the laws of gravity, we can now choose between two repertoires: the one in which we are challenged to choose between construction or truth, and the one in which construction and truth become synonyms. On the one hand, we are paralyzed, like Buridan's ass having to choose between facts and fetishes. On the other, we pass thanks to factishes.
If you don't know what Burden's ass is, it's a donkey
Hmm.
who's equally hungry and equally thirsty, and he has a water on one side and like hay, just food on the other side, and they're both equal distances away, and he ends up just dying because he
Yeah,
can't choose either one of them.
fair enough. That is a very funny story, actually. But hold on. Yeah, so, yeah, and then between facts and fetishes, on the other, we pass thanks to factishes. So they as in pass as in like the chart earlier where we pass between
Yeah.
them. Yeah. In this way, the ordinary actor, when questioned, will very explicitly and with wild intelligence multiply the life forms that allow one to pass, thanks to factishes, without ever obeying the either or choice of the modern repertoire. Yet these subtle theories will remain hidden, since the only way to sum them up officially lies in the choice that has to be made between construction and autonomy, subject and object, fact and fetish. Let us not try to simplify the situation. We cannot remain unaware either of the multiplicity of discourses that speak of passing while turning away from the modern alternative, or the importance of the modern's theory requiring a choice that never seems to serve any purpose. Let me reread that. I'm trying to digest that. Let us not try to simplify the situation. We cannot remain unaware either of the multiplicity of discourses that speak of passing while turning away. Okay, we cannot omit either of the multiplicity of discourses that speak of passing while turning away from the modern alternative, or of the importance of the modern's theory requiring a choice that never seems to serve any purpose. So I guess here's my question is that what is, and maybe I missed this, but like what, I understand that the modern theory has the moderns theory and the moderns practice diverges, and that it is this distinction between the choice made in theory and the passage in practice that actually defines it. But what is like the actual purpose served? Is that something that he's already explained and I just missed, or is he going to explain that a little bit later?
Um, he does explain it, and I forget. He says it, and he says it so well, and I forget exactly what it is.
Okay. Well, if he
Um,
explains it later, then I will just trust that
yeah,
we will get to it. Um, yes.
a lot of Latour can be summed up like that. I don't
Mhm.
understand this. Let's continue reading.
Yes. So there is something sublime in the comparison between this immense surface of discourses, mechanisms, practices, and subtle remarks by which the actors themselves assert the self evidence of an easy passage on both sides of the words fact and fetish, and the fussy, uh, Pharisaic attentiveness with which we believe this passage to be closed forever. Or at least since we began trying to convince ourselves that we have been modern, that is to say, radically and not just relatively different from the people of the Gold Coast. And then there was a footnote earlier. Let me check this one. 27. Hence the fact, otherwise hard to explain, that the sociology of the quote actors themselves unquote can assert both that it is content with recording what the actors say and also that it adds something that they never say. See Bruno Latour reassembling the social. Yep. Yeah. Far from giving the voiceless a voice or theorizing their simple practices, this sociology is content with foregrounding common forms of life against the dictats, I guess is dictates of critical
Yeah.
thought, whence come from the notions of mediation, actor network, translation, modes of coordination, symmetry, and non-modernity. Such infra-theoretical notions are aimed neither at expressing the practical knowledge of the actors nor at explaining it. Actors do that, but only at documenting it. Such a redescription of what they know might be useful to the actors. Ordinary sociologists then find themselves on the same footing as ordinary actors, just as the coastal blacks do with the moderns, and for the same reason. And then Pippa says, uh, the purpose of the distinction is a non purpose. It serves only to denounce twice. Um,
I think um I think that's right.
okay.
Pretty sure. Um, I have trouble where sometimes
Hmm.
I know things, and then I can't put them into words at all, and I
Mhm.
can't explain what I know. And
Yeah.
I think that's right. I think Pippa is right there.
Okay. Let us go even further. The very notion of practice arises from the requirement the moderns impose. Since we cannot express ourselves in the either or terms of critical thinking, we are obliged to continue doing what we have done, always done, but in secret. And then this goes to another footnote. Um, So, amusingly enough, the pragmatism that could be taken for the philosophy of practice remains so intimidated by the authoritative position of its adversaries that it is forced to depict practice as modest, limited, utilitarian, humanist, and convenient, thereby occupying unquestioningly the place critical philosophy had prepared for it. Modesty is a philosophical virtue only if it decides for itself how it will keep from telling somebody what to do or from proposing foundations. Hmm. Let me think about that. Modesty is a philosophical virtue only if it decides for itself how it will keep from telling somebody what to do or from proposing foundations. Hmm. So maybe this is something. Okay, modesty is only if it. Uh, how it will keep. Sorry, I'm trying to digest this one. Modesty is a philosophical virtue only if it decides for itself how it will keep from telling somebody what to do or from proposing foundations.
I can try to explain.
Sure, go for it.
I'm understanding correctly. What he is the critic doesn't necessarily um think that what the ordinary actor is doing is useless.
Mm-hmm.
It is that this person is mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
It like more so than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you depict practice as modest, limited to like specific things instead of what it actually is, which is uh, as Latour talks about, practice is like huge. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's not like something that is all that small.
Yeah.
Um, and so for Latour to make it small in that way grants it the position that I kind of explained that badly, but
No, so
hope you understand what I
I
mean.
think I understand. Like, I guess because like he's talking about pragmatism here, right? And the idea of it uh taking a limited position, right? Um, Yeah, so it is forced to depict practice as modest, limited, utilitarian, humanist, and convenient. Um, so like I think what you're saying is that uh, or I guess what you're saying and what he's saying is that um, pragmatism is or pragmatist philosophers or pragmatism as a theory limits its scope way more than it needs to uh
Yeah.
because of because of like critical philosophy or critical sociology basically telling it you need to know your place. So pragmatism, you can operate on people's everyday lives, but you can't operate when we actually get to the real meat and potatoes of things. uh is that am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, kind of. Or there's another thing.
Hmm.
Or there's the other thing of well, of course, this may be how humans feel, but this isn't how it really is.
Hmm.
That we're just simply trapped in a representation.
Hmm.
Uh, which is but this what he's saying right now is quite similar to what he ends up going to say about political epistemology
Hmm.
and the inverse of that, where political epistemologists end up limiting themselves to the limited notion of nature uh, when they're talking about things
Okay.
when they don't need to. when they don't need to, and in practice they don't engage with that. That's kind of
I
another
have
thing.
learned I do know a little political epistemology. So if he gets to that, then I will probably have more to say.
Not in this book. In the book I'm reading.
Okay, fair
In
enough.
the book I'm reading,
Well,
yeah.
I'm gonna try to watch back through your streams to catch up because I would love to participate. Uh,
Well, I will be
participate.
covering the entire book,
Yeah,
and it's probably going to take like
yeah,
20 more streams.
yeah. So I've got plenty of time to
If I
catch
don't
up.
go any slower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so practice is the clandestine wisdom of the passage that stubbornly maintains, but since it can no longer say so out loud, it is content merely to act accordingly, to murmur its message in hushed tones, that construction and reality are synonyms. A strange clandestine, clandestinity, clandestinity, a strange clandestinity, since it is also, in our common experience, one of those secrets that everyone knows about, told in 1,000 different ways through 1,000 different channels. Yes, but theory continues, and for very good reasons that we must now sorry, and for very good reasons that we must now grasp, not to take these multiple confessions seriously. We shall now use the word belief for the process that allows one to keep an official theory at the farthest possible distance from its informal practice, without any relationship between the two except for the passionate, anxious, and meticulous care taken to maintain the separation. And we shall call the anthropological description of of this process agnosticism. That's important to highlight. All right.
Yes.
That is that section. As you can probably tell, I am losing my ability to read, so I think I'm going to call it there. Um, but
No problem.
Envy, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, and you really did help me understand this. Everybody in the
I'm
audience,
glad.
go check out her channel. She is covering a different book by Latour right now. Um, Uh, and if you enjoy this stream, you will probably also enjoy those ones. I listened to the
Just
first one. Mm-hmm.
and even if you don't watch the streams, and if you have any questions about Latour, just ask me questions. I will literally answer you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, uh, take care, everybody. Uh, I will see you for the next one.
Also, if you want me on the next stream, the
Mm-hmm.
next part is one of my favorite parts, so I'd be more than happy to join.
Okay, I will make sure to mark that off. So that I don't. I will. We can coordinate that off stream. Anyway, goodbye, everybody.